Great, thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Pedro Rios, and I'm Director of the U.S.-Mexico Border Program for the American Friends Service Committee, and also a member of the Friends of Friendship Park Coalition. And I've been working with the Zooming to the Border for Human Rights Coalition now for, I guess it's been around 3 years now since the beginning of the pandemic. And shortly, Laura will share a little bit more about what the Zooming to the Border for Human Rights Coalition is. So thank you all for joining. We have a wonderful panel today, wonderful speakers, and as the speakers will be sharing what they have to say, I'll place their bios in the chat so you can find out who they are, what their background is, and how what they're saying is so important to our message here. So let me just pause sharing. Let me see, stop sharing for a second. Great to see everyone joining. And again, please place yourself on mute. And I will invite everyone as you're joining, if you'd like to place your name in the chat, where you're joining us from, whether you've been to Friendship Park in the past or not. And that's something that way it'll give us an idea of who's listening in, who's tuning in, and from where you're joining us. So again, I'll introduce myself. My name is Pedro Rios. I'm again Director of the American Friends Service Committee's U.S.-Mexico Border Program, and also affiliated with the Friends of Friendship Park Coalition and the Zooming to the Border for Human Rights Coalition, which began 3 years ago and has been organizing these types of forums, primarily to give people an opportunity to have a better understanding of what is taking place along border communities. And some of these recorded conversations are available in the Tribuno del Pueblo and the People's Tribune, and I'll ask at some point Bob to place that information in the chat as well. You are attending our panel, which is titled "How 30-Foot Border Walls Present an Imminent Danger," specifically to Friendship Park. And so our conversation will center on Friendship Park, but you will hear our speakers who will address more generally as well the impact that 30-foot border walls have had in creating a public health crisis in our region. So again, I invite you to place your name in the chat, where you're from, and whether you've been to Friendship Park in the past. So thank you, everyone. I will turn it now to Laura Garcia, who will share a little bit more of what the Zooming to the Border for Human Rights Coalition is and who she represents, so specifically Tribuno del Pueblo, the People's Tribune. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pedro. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yes, I'm Laura Garcia, and I'm the editor of the Tribuno del Pueblo, and our sister publication is People's Tribune, which the editor is Bob Lee. We came about because of the urgent situation at the border, when children were being separated from their families about 3 years ago, and the situation at the border was urgent as far as the human rights violations. So a group of us, we're going to go to the border, but of course, the pandemic happened, and we opted to do Zooming webinars, which has been a really good decision because we were able to reach a lot more people, and especially people that are at the front of what's going on at the border, to tell us, to inform us, so that we're not at the border, like I'm from Chicago, and other people that are not there, we're able to spread the word to what is happening, and not only what is happening, but also to get from the leaders at the front to tell us what's needed, how can we help, what can be done. So that's 3 years ago. We're a coalition of organizations from different parts of the country, and we committed to doing these webinars at least 4 or 5 a year as the situation develops. So this one is our first one this year, and the next one we're going to be working on witness at the border. the coalition Zooming to the Border was able to participate and partner with Witness at the Border, this organization, and we traveled the border, the 2,000-mile border in December, and we're going to be able to bring back reports probably at our next webinar. And so that's all I want to say. And Bob is putting our websites on the chat so that you can reach out. And of course, un abrazo por estar aquí. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you, Bob, for all your work, and all the rest of the members of the Zooming to the Border Coalition for Human Rights, whom I've had the pleasure of collaborating with now for 3 years, as I mentioned earlier. Thank you, Nancy Muro, who's also here joining us, who has been helping us with the graphic designs and putting together wonderful ideas that I think has enriched our ability to get this information about the experiences that the fronterizas, the borderlanders have to people that are not from the border. And the topic today, obviously, the impact and the imminent danger that 30-foot border walls have is extremely important to us, and specifically how they will impact Friendship Park. And I should say that today, this morning was the first day where we've actually seen more of the major changes to Friendship Park, with the heavy machinery coming in and the removal of the secondary barrier. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. And so thank you. So I'll provide a little bit of background. I'll begin sharing my screen. That way we can see, let's see. Okay, great. So as some context, and Laura mentioned in the beginning, the tragic situation that happened along the San Diego coast, where, as far as we know, there are 8 individuals, 7 of whom are Mexican nationals, that drowned in panga boats as they attempted to arrive into San Diego. And in part, this, we can say this is a consequence of the militarization of border communities, how over the course of the past 25 to 30 years, there's been a strategy called the prevention through deterrence. And if you prevent people from coming in by deterring them, then that will send a message to other migrants that they should not attempt to cross into the US. And it's been my assessment now for years that the logic of hurting people, the logic of creating situations where people are placed in harm's way has been part of the calculus of militarizing border communities. And the higher that border walls go, the more likelihood that people will fall and get injured, or the likelihood that people will try and attempt to cross through other means, including the maritime crossings, which have increased by 700% over the course of the past 3 to 5 years. And so this tragic situation that happened along the coast this past weekend, where 8 people lost their lives, is just something that we can point to, the fact that there aren't humanitarian ways of for people seeking asylum to arrive into the United States. So with that, I do want to say that Friendship Park used to be a place where people could easily get together and share meals, share food. You see a couple here that's, I remember this couple used to come almost every weekend, and they would sit alongside and chat for hours. That's no longer a possibility. And so what's changed? On the first day in office, President Biden froze the border wall construction project, and he requested a review of all the projects across the 2,000-mile border with US and Mexico. In June of 2021, the administration released its border wall plan. Let me see why this isn't moving forward. Here we go. And in the border wall plan, it declared that it would prioritize projects for completion only if they are needed to address life, safety, environmental, or other remediation requirements. And so US Border Patrol officials confirmed to the Friends of Friendship Park Coalition that the decision to erect 30-foot border walls at Friendship Park, rather than simply replacing the existing infrastructure or repairing the existing barriers, was made not out of concern for public safety, nor because of appropriations requirements. Instead, the final designs were approved to satisfy what the San Diego Border Patrol sector leadership described as operational effectiveness. In response to concerns expressed by local community members and elected officials from California at every level of government, US officials froze the construction project at Friendship Park in August of 2022 to conduct additional stakeholder outreach and to further engage with the community. Californians and people from across the country sent hundreds, if not thousands, of comments, essentially saying that we did not want to see 30-foot border walls at Friendship Park. This included a letter signed in October of last year by state parks declaring their opposition to the Border Patrol's plans for 30-foot border walls. Unfortunately, on January 17th of this year, Border Patrol announced their intention to resume the construction with no modifications to the secondary barrier, and that's the barrier that's being worked on or being taken down as of today, and with some minor inconsequential modifications to the primary barrier, and that's the barrier that sits right along the demarcation line between Mexico and the United States. And so construction at Friendship Park has begun. These are images supplied to us by our colleague Dan Watman, and they show how they're removing the secondary barrier and are placing what appears to be a temporary barrier that's made out of these rusted colored bollards that our friend Dan Watman has been documenting since this morning and into the late afternoon. So removal of the existing primary border wall of these 18 feet and the construction of the primary border wall, as I mentioned, has already begun. The project is expected to last about 6 months. That time frame might actually be delayed because of all the rain events that we've had. Makes it difficult for the construction crews to actually get out and do the construction that they need to do. So let me stop sharing from now. Okay, so with that, I'd like to invite our first speaker. Our first speaker is Robert Vivar, and I've placed his bio in the chat. Robert has been a wonderful contributor to the for seeking out justice around Friendship Park. He's also known for his wonderful advocacy activities around bringing deported vets back to the United States. And so it's my pleasure to welcome Robert so he can share his experiences, what he has seen, his experiences with some of the organizations, including Border Church, including the Friends of Friendship Park. Robert, feel free to take the mic. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. I want to thank everybody for being here today with us on this very important issue of saving Friendship Park. Just to give you a little bit of background why Friendship Park is so important to me. Well, first of all, before anything, Friendship Park to many of us is considered sacred ground. It's considered sacred ground because that's the only place where families that have been separated by the broken immigration system can come together and continue to be a family. It's the only place where the community of San Diego and Tijuana, who have been friends forever, can continue to be friends and strengthen that friendship through that barrier that they try to use to separate us. Going back on a little bit of the background why it's important to me, I was deported in 2013 after living in the United States since the age of 6 legally. And being deported, I was taken away from my home, from my family, from my life. And you can imagine what a family will go through when all this is taken away from them. The amount of anxiety, depression that individual is going to go through. And that is one of the reasons why we have so many persons willing to risk their life through the ocean, through the mountainous desert, even through those 30-foot walls that many have fallen off of, fallen to their death, or dismembered, disabled for life because of the broken bones. That anxiety is such that it drives folks to risk their life just to be able to get to their family. And I was no different. When I first found Friendship Park about 6 months after I had been deported in early 2014, I arrived at Friendship Park, and I did not know what to expect. I was told that there was a church service that was carried out at the border wall with a pastor on the U.S. side and a pastor on the Mexico side. I thought, well, that's pretty neat. I have to see that. I didn't understand yet the impact of this type of cross-border binational communion service represented. When I arrived at Friendship Park, and my sight tried to focus on the San Diego part of Friendship Park, and I could see downtown San Diego, I had to turn away. It was too difficult for me to look across that border wall to San Diego, realizing that my family, my loved ones, were on that side of the border, and there was nothing that I could do at that point to reach them. So I had a tremendous level of anxiety, of depression. I was not in a very good shape. However, what caught my attention were the people, the families that were gathered there at Friendship Park on both sides of the border, that were being a family, that were laughing, that were enjoying family time. And that prompted me to want to continue to come to Friendship Park and get involved. And the more that I came to Friendship Park, and I got to know some of these families and some of the organizations and those representing the organizations, the more strength that I was acquiring in order to deal with my own anxiety, with my own depression. Just seeing the folks on the U.S. side coming to Friendship Park for different activities, Pastor John for Border Church, and many other organizations coming to visit, gave me a very great impression that we were, yes, deported, but we were not alone. And people in the United States, people in San Diego cared for us and wanted to show their care and their love for us in solidarity by coming to Friendship Park and being a part of that community. This, as time was progressing, motivated me even more to continue to get involved and advocate for more space for families to be able to come together. I had not seen my son and two of my granddaughters for about 4 years. And the first time that I saw him in 4 years was at Friendship Park, right through that border wall. And just being able to see them and talk to them and touch the pinky on my granddaughters gave me a burst of energy, of motivation to continue advocating and being a part of Friendship Park. That coupled with the border church service, renewing my faith to continue fighting to one day be able to be reunited with my family, and seeing the different folks that would come to celebrate the border church on the U.S. side, continued to reinforce my thoughts of how much we needed to continue to fight for this park. Many could probably find it kind of difficult to understand the level of anxiety that a person may go through. It's something that you have to experience yourself to really quite understand it. And sometimes you are not able to deal with it. As one of my colleagues, where I used to work, I was working for a call center in Tijuana, Avis Budget Car Group. And one of my colleagues that was working for one of the other campaigns had a tragic situation. He was doing good. He was a supervisor, working very well. We all thought he was doing great. And that desperation got to him one day, and he risked his life to reach his family in the United States. He crossed the border wall somewhere between downtown Tijuana and Friendship Park. And the last time that anybody heard from him was one of his coworkers on a phone call, telling his coworker that he didn't think he was going to make it. And that was the last time he heard from him. We all heard from him. A couple of days later, he was found somewhere in that proximity of downtown Tijuana and Friendship Park, where he had drowned in a body of water. He was not able, and I don't know what exactly his circumstances were, but he was not able to gain the strength to continue fighting to be reunited with his family. And that is the strength that I found at Friendship Park with Border Church. And even though I have been able to return legally to the United States, I continue to fight for Friendship Park and Border Church, because we have to continue to fight for those families that have been separated by this broken immigration system. And I will continue as long as God gives me the ability to fight for our families and for our park. Thank you, and I appreciate you all being here today.
Where did she come from? How did she get to Albuquerque?
Thank you so much, Robert. I think your testimony is so important to many of us, to all of us. I think your testimony reflects the reality that so many people live through and have experienced, the division, the family separation, and all of that is lived and experienced there at Friendship Park. I remember one time that I was able to witness a family from Michoacan in Tijuana and their same family from Michigan uniting there, and probably was going to be the last time that they saw their grandmother who had terminal cancer. And that's why, as you say, it's become such a sacred ground because of these interactions that humanize the space in spite of the divisive border walls that currently exist. I can't imagine what it'll be like with 30-foot border walls that will be much taller, that won't allow for the visibility that people have now, and where the bollard style infrastructure will prevent the interactions that people are able to experience when they're up close and doing the pinky kisses, as you mentioned. Thank you, Robert, again, for all of your work. And I'd like to, this is a perfect segue, because our next speaker is Selene Gutierrez, and I'll place her bio in the chat. Selene is very much experiences what Robert described, having visited Friendship Park for many years to see her family, And now that Friendship Park has been closed for over 3 years, she hasn't had that ability to see her family through the border walls, and the impact of the construction of 30-foot border walls obviously will have tremendous and disastrous ramifications about how she will experience visiting with her family if and when that ever happens. So Selena, I'll pass it over to you so you can share your testimony and your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so great to be with you guys. Thank you so much for joining this chat today. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the fact that you guys are here. So my name is Selena Gutierrez, and I have been here in the United States since the age of 5. I was pretty much here, and I've known San Diego and the area of San Diego for so long. I didn't know about Friendship Park until it became part of my life, and that was when I was gonna meet my grandparents for the first time. By the way, I'm a DACA recipient, so this doesn't allow me to leave the United States to be able to visit with family or to be able to meet some of my loved ones that I have never had the chance to meet. So having that restriction in Friendship Park has become even greater part of my life. In the early 2000s was the first time that I would meet my grandparents after so many years. So meeting them gave me the opportunity to connect with them and to be able to, at the time I was able to hold hands with them. And it was so great to meet them. And it was the first time and the last time that I would be able to see them again. So having that experience at Friendship Park, it allowed me to connect with family. It allowed me to connect again with meeting my loved ones. And later on in Friendship Park, I wouldn't think that Friendship Park would be part of my history again until 2009, that part of my family and myself had a deportation. Unfortunately, my sister and my mom were fully deported to Mexico. And that's when Friendship Park becomes again part of my life. And I knew that this park existed, but due to the deportation that I had, I was scared to even get close to Friendship Park. I was scared to even get close to anything that had to do with the border. But later on, when DACA passed, I was able to feel like I had that protection to get close. And that's when I reunited with my sister at Friendship Park. And for you guys who have not been in Friendship Park, it's such a moment of such a special moment, a moment of that it's really unexplainable to be behind that first gate and know that your family member is just a couple feet away, and know that you would have that face-to-face conversation. It took about 7 years for me to get to Friendship Park. And so to be able to see my sister there, and at the time we were not able to touch except for Pinky, that brought me a sense of hope, and it brought me a sense of connection, family. My sister and I have been very close, and so 13 years have passed, and Friendship Park has been that place of connection. That has been that place where I can meet with my sister. My mother would return to the United States after 4 years, but Friendship Park was also the place to meet. So Friendship Park has been a place that has allowed families to remain connected, has allowed my family to remain connected. And I feel that what makes it very inhumane is to have the possibility to have answers and to not act on it. Friendship Park has been a place of friendship, has been a place of my national church. So to even be able to go and see my family and have this church there, I think anybody who has that spirituality, doesn't matter really what the background is, it gives you a sense of hope and gives you a place that you can say, you know what, I have that support. So it has allowed me not only to meet my family, but also to have that sense of spiritual hope that and strength that I have needed throughout all these years. At this point, during the pandemic, I felt like it had me really anxious. It had me really I'm so desperate because this is a time that I really wanted to be even more connected with my family, with my sister, and to see how she was doing. The uncertainty of all this pandemic and what it brought made it even harder um, to have had Friendship Park close, really. So I'm so glad to be part of this panel, and I'm so glad to share my story. I feel that the 30-foot walls in this park will make it very difficult to continue that connection. It's already hard enough to just be able to touch pinkies and to have that mesh fence there. But I feel that even with this new wall, it will bring a more distraught. It would feel even more unwelcoming. I think that you have even a bigger sense of just like the reality of what this is, the reality of the many families, including mine, is living because of this new wall that, in my opinion, I find it very unnecessary. I feel that dialogue needs to initiate with people who use this park, who have been part of this amazing historical place. And I agree with what was said, that it's very sacred, not only for myself, but to the thousands of families that travel all over the United States to come and meet to that place. I've had that opportunity to meet with other people who are in the same struggle as me, and everything from New York, San Francisco, people from around the United States come to just have that connection with family, have that moment to reconnect and feel that, we're not so far, feel that hope that I have felt throughout the many years of visiting Friendship Park. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Selene, for your testimony, for your witness, and for sharing your story. It takes a lot to share the story, especially when it's at such a personal level. So I really appreciate you and your family as well. Because it's really you're representing your family when you're coming and sharing your testimony. So it's such a powerful testimony, much like Robert's. In terms of being able to humanize the experience at Friendship Park in ways that border walls don't, right? So what you're doing is you're countering the dehumanization of border walls, and I think that goes a long way, and that's the hope that you're really inspiring. I want to quickly call attention to the chat. Our colleague Nancy has placed some links of how you can follow the work of the Friends of Friendship Park, how you can get involved, and she placed links to the social media pages, as well as a link to a petition that we have going. We know that President Biden was in town yesterday, and several of us were welcoming him with signs that said "Save Friendship Park" and "Don't build 30-foot border walls." So please check out those links and sign the petition, share it around with your contacts. Also, thank you to Ilana, who placed in some of the links to the Zooming to the Border pages, a report that we did that also includes a chapter that's focused on the impact of border walls throughout the U.S.-Mexico connection, the 2,000 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border. And so take a look at those links as well. Our next speaker is, excited to present Dr. Alexander Tenorio. He is a third-year resident at UCSD in the Department of Neurological Surgery. And I've placed his bio in the chat. He has published a couple of reports, and it's publishing a third report that detailed the tragic impact of falls from the border wall. And earlier last year, both UCSD and Scripps went public in saying our trauma units are completely saturated with cases of people that have been injured as a result of these falls. And we want to make sure that the public knows that this is a public health crisis that we're experiencing. And so I've been in contact with both UCSD and Scripps trauma surgeons and representatives, and the work that they're doing is just tremendous. And so I'm glad that Dr. Tenorio is joining us today, and I'll place the links as he's speaking in the chat, so you could have them for reference. Thank you, Dr. Tenorio, for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Tenorio. Very happy to be part of this panel. It's very important work that all of you are doing. I appreciate everything you're doing. Just a quick background about myself and why I'm so passionate about this work. My parents crossed the same border back in the 1980s when it was, obviously not 30 feet. It was around 8 to 10 feet. I grew up in South LA, essentially in a migrant community. Everyone was from, the large majority, over 90%, were immigrants from Mexico or, other Latin American countries. And I grew up, around them speaking Spanish. I didn't learn English until middle school. So, I feel, this population is very near and dear to my heart. It's a population that I will fight for and continue advocating for, and no matter what I end up doing. So that's the main reason, I got, I'm one of the residents at the trauma hospital. I cover nights there. So I started seeing all these, border fall injuries. And that's when I started looking at the, brain and spine injuries, looking at the data, and we did see, the border wall was increased in, the project was finished in 2019 by the previous administration. Previously it was, as you know, probably 8 to 10 feet, and he increased it to 18 to 30 feet. The project finished in 2019. So essentially what I looked at was the amount of border fall injuries, specifically neurologic injuries, meaning brain injuries and spinal cord injuries, before the wall was extended and afterwards. And what we found was that spinal cord injuries increased by about 70% after the wall was extended. And even more importantly, more tragically, there were no intracranial injuries before the border wall was increased to 30 feet. All brain injuries have occurred after the increase to 30 feet. And as Pedro mentioned, I'm having some work coming out soon that also shows the vascular injuries, and all the vascular and brain injuries, which are we consider more severe injuries, have occurred after the border wall has been increased to 18 to 30 feet. So that's, that what I feel is, is so tragic here at Friendship Park, besides the humanistic side, besides the human impact that, the other panelists have shared, it's going to have on the border wall. What I, want, and what I want, key decision makers to know is that they are, I'm afraid that there's going to be a lot more severely morbid and fatal injuries that are going to be occurring by increasing the border wall here at Friendship Park to 30 feet. And that's why I consider this a very, very urgent issue. I will continue fighting for this and advocating for this. And if there's any way I could help you, I'm happy to help. I can't thank you guys enough for everything you're doing. I'm just, very happy to, be a part of this panel and help any way I can.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Tenorio. And I know that you will, next month, you will be attending an important conference where you'll be presenting a resolution that will address the potential impact that 30-foot border walls will have at Friendship Park. So we appreciate all the work that you're doing to get this in front of other people and get this in front of decision makers as well, and have them understand the true tragic medical impacts that 30-foot border walls are having in our society. So thank you for all the work that you're doing, which is obviously very important. Our next speaker, Adriana Hasso, is a colleague of mine. We've worked together now for many years, and I've placed her bio in the chat as well. Adriana will be sharing with us what the struggle has been over the years at Friendship Park. She's been involved with the Friends of Friendship Park probably since its inception, so I appreciate her historic perspective that she'll bring. As she will be speaking, I will share my screen and present a series of photos so you can get a sense of some of the events that have taken place going back to 2008 to yesterday. So thank you, Adriana, for joining us today and for sharing your observations on this topic.
Thank you, Pedro. And I am truly honored to be in the presence of Selene, Robert, and Dr. Tenorio. It is a great privilege to be here and to speak about, as Pedro began our conversation or dialogue today, making sure that we provide a context to the tragedy of Sunday here in our region. And thank you, Laura, for raising that, because it is true that as the reality or border reality becomes, becomes a victim in some ways of the deadly policies on immigration and border issues, we also, and to this, the contribution of Robert and Selene and the work that Dr. Tenorio is doing is that through resistance and collective power, we're able to push back, and that we are in a conversation, ongoing conversation about what things are meaningful to community and to be able to unify forces and to resist. So the earlier picture that Pedro shared is the first Marcha de Silencio, which took place in 2008, which was, as you can see behind the banner where it says No al Muro de la Muerte. It was a barrier that was in place, the only barrier that was in place at that time. Then, as some of the images and pictures showed earlier, the second barrier came into place in 2008, 2009. So here you have a group of students who participated in the Marcha de Silencio, and we walked for about 6.5 miles because it was raining season in San Diego at that time, and it was we were not able to drive anywhere close to the location, but we walked in unity and in silence to the monument, and that was the exemplification of resistance back in 2008. So you can show the next picture, Pedro. This is also a continuation of when we held a march to the location. You see people who had visited from Sacramento, I believe was a delegation of people from Sacramento who made their way to our region and wanted, and we hosted their visit, and we walked at that time all the way to the fence and greeted our friends across the fence for the 2009. Next, Pedro. Here we have a sit-in that we did at the headquarters of Border Patrol. As I think it was pointed out earlier, that a lot of the requests, petitions, and actions are to be to demand on the local leadership of the agency, and often we, especially now with the project beginning, they're not wanting to see us or hear us or talk to us. We've been knocking on their door many times in the last month or so, and they have chosen to ignore us. It seems like there's their protocol or their policy at that moment. So here you have, a statement at the headquarters in Chula Vista in 2009. Here you have an action that took place in 2018, led by American Friends Service Committee, but also bringing together a very strong group of people from people who were representatives of faith communities throughout the US. And here you have the beginning of the contact with the agency that demanded for the people of faith to not take one more step into what they consider federal federal jurisdiction or federal ground. On that day, 36 people were arrested, most of them representatives of faith from different places, from different points of the country. And a person was detained, a participant of the protest was detained for over 24 hours. Obviously, a US citizen, and all of the people who were put under, who were detained on that day were also US citizens. Next one, Pedro. Here you have the continuation of our Marchas de Silencio. As you can see, it's less people than the previous pictures, but that is intentional in the sense that more and more the space has become, there's a serious lack of access to the space. The agency has made it impossible for families to visit, as Robert and Selene pointed out. Here you have our compañero en struggle, John, leading the Marcha del Silencio. And in essence, is different people walking towards the barrier and stopping at the at what is considered by the agency to be federal land, and showing pictures of our very powerful and critical compañera, professional photographer Maria Teresa Hernandez, who has for over 20 years become our chosen documentary in terms of photographs, and the pictures that you see that people are holding or placing on their face is pictures of families who at one point were using the space to reunite and to share space. Here you have an ofrenda, a plant of white sage that was hanged from both sides of the fence by compañero en struggle Dan, who set it up, I think, over a year ago, and it has been there since today, since a year ago, and today was the day that Border Patrol brought it down from both from the US side and the Mexican side in their project, in the project that they have going on right now. And it was meaningful to keep it there and to see it and to visit and to make reference to it until today, when when Border Patrol decided to remove it. Here you have, again, compañero John, through Border Church 2011, serving communion to people on the US side and the Mexican side. It was at that time that we were still able to share space with our friends on the other side. And obviously that's not the case, hasn't been the case in a few years now. But we continue to fight. And I think, this picture exemplifies and illustrates the friendship and the love and the humanity and the dignity that we will continue to fight, and we will continue to push back, and we will continue, our communities will recover that space where dreams and aspirations of thousands of families throughout the history of the space have held. And we thank you for your time. We know that you are you know that all of you are with us, and that when we suffered and we go through struggles, you're also there. And here the last one was as Biden's visit yesterday to the Point Loma area, we held messages of saving our park and stopping the project at Friendship Park. And as his fancy car or fancy limousines were making their way, we were protesting and making a statement saying that the park should be reopened and should be the space of humanity and hope that has been for generations. Thank you, Pedro.
Great, thank you so much, Adriana, for taking us on this visual time machine of being able to see what the resistance and the struggle has been during the various iterations of border wall construction at Friendship Park. And we find ourselves, as we all know, on another struggle with the construction of now 30-foot border walls in this sacred space. And so now I'd like to open it up for questions. Before I do, though, I do want to again point out Nancy has posted the links to the various social media sites where you can find the Friends of Friendship Park, as well as the website. And then also the petition that we're putting out there asking Governor Newsom to talk to President Biden about this issue, to side with us, to say, hey, we don't want 30-foot border walls on a California park. So take a look at that petition. Please sign it, share it with your family and friends, get the word out. We know that Governor Newsom will be in San Diego on the 19th. So some of us will be welcoming him the way we did President Biden with signs. And so more details about that will be coming up in the future. So that one way to connect is through the different web social media sites where we'll have information about how to join us on those actions. So questions, I know I'm sure there are plenty of people that have questions about this. We have about 20 minutes for questions. So let's see, maybe if we can remove the spotlight and see if folks can raise their hand feature, and we'll get to questions in that way. If not, I can ask questions as well. All right, Eduardo, I see that you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
I don't know if this relates to this, but I just saw an email recently that Biden is allowing the Ukrainian people to come over without any checking of any documents, while he's still having the Venezuelan and other people having to stay over there. To me, that's two standards they're having, and he's doing it for political reasons, not for humanitarian reasons. I don't know if people have any comments or opinions on that. That's all.
Thank you, Eduardo. I mean, how it's connected here is that in the same way that Ukrainian migrants were provided with an expeditious process to begin their asylum cases, we would like to see that also apply to everyone else. Because then what happens is that people that are forced to wait in Mexican border towns become frustrated that there isn't a way for them to cross or present themselves at the ports. And it causes a lot of desperation, which then increases the likelihood of more people attempting to scale the 30-foot border walls, which then leads to more people falling from the border walls. And as Dr. Tenorio mentioned, this has been extremely troublesome to see the ERs and the trauma units completely filled with people who have fallen. The Mexican consulate recently published a report saying that of the over 600 people that they were repatriated who were injured, over 400 of them, of those injuries were related to border wall falls. And so that's a significant number of people that are falling. And just to mention those numbers only account for Mexican nationals. It doesn't account for people of other nationalities, which is a much higher number. So thank you for your question, Eduardo. Any other questions that others might have? Go ahead, Nancy.
Can you talk more about how borders are not really working, and talk about how there's employees that work every day at the border repairing and patching some of the holes that people make? And then the second reason that happened this past Sunday, I think you already mentioned about unfortunately the deaths of 8 people dying trying to get to the US. And then and this is why borders are not working, because they're gonna use other like dangerous paths in order to get here. Can you mention something about that, Pedro?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. So the Washington Post published a report saying that the Trump's border walls have been breached hundreds, if not thousands of times. And the majority of the breaches are taking place in the San Diego and in the Calexico sectors, to the extent where I think they amount to about 3 breaches per day. So if you're able to get up close to the border wall on the Mexican side, you can easily detect where those breaches have taken place, because the reparation of the breaches are there. You see the different type of steel that has been placed to repair where the steel was cut. When Donald Trump placed his border wall prototypes over in the Otay Mesa area, they conducted all sorts of tests on them, on exercises, on how quickly they can be scaled. They took models into a secret location to see how they could be cut. What was determined at some point is that they were easily breachable as well. And so in many ways, going back to the question of how political it is, from our experience, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican in the White House. Our experience is that these border walls do become a political issue in order to push for a certain political agenda. And unfortunately, what that means is that those that get caught in the crosshairs are people who are forced to cross through extremely dangerous methods, such as attempting to scale the 30-foot border wall, or crossing through the deserts where people die of exposure to the elements. And we've seen a record number of people dying in the deserts as well over the past couple of years, or take to the maritime crossings, as we saw with the latest incident where 8 people lost their lives in their attempt to cross into the US. Go ahead, Norberto.
Yeah, hello, Pedro. Me llamo Norberto Salazar. I'm a graduate of UCSD, and I'm a retired public school teacher after 35 years of service here in South County. But I'm also a member of the board for the UCSD Chicano Alumni Association, which is a scholarship foundation based at San Diego Foundation. I don't know if you know, do you know Nick Aguilar?
I don't.
Okay, well, Nick is the president of our board. And we work also with MECHA, and we raise funds for scholarships for Chicanos on campus. But I wanted to, I don't have a question, but rather I have a request. I'm going to put my email in the chat box, and I'd like to extend an opportunity to you and to the sponsors of this beautiful Zoom meeting, Zooming to the Border, that maybe we can, and if other people who are associated with the university want to also participate, maybe together we can get a resolution of some sort through the through MECHA at UCSD, and maybe even have an event at MECHA at UCSD about zooming to the border to bring these issues up to students there. So basically that's what I wanted to say, and I'll put my email in the chat box, and maybe we can work together to somehow down the line. I don't know, the UCSD chancellor is Pradeep Khosla. I know that he's has an open mind to questions of ethnicity, especially from the Asian Americans and the Black Americans on campus as well. And maybe we can get him involved somehow as well. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Pedro.
Great, thank you, Norberto. We'll be sure to take down your email once you place it in the chat. And I want to encourage folks, if you have any questions for our speakers, I'd like to give our speakers a chance to also answer any follow-up questions that you might have. And I see there's a question by Marcus in the chat. How has the support been and what is needed now? Maybe one of the speakers would like to take that question on.
Yeah, maybe I can take it on, Pedro. Thank you. And thank you, Marcus, for sharing that and asking. I made an effort to answer on the chat to your question, but I think it's a good one in terms of, I think we're clear that we're dealing with people who have great knowledge and experience of the space, but also some of the challenges and the resistance that has been taking place throughout the years. I think it's in terms of what is needed or what people could do from far, and especially if you're in San Diego, if you're close to us, one of the things that if you are moved by the information that you're hearing and the urgency of the struggle, you can come and meet us. And we would love to meet you. You can come, and our meetings are typically every Sunday in person. And then we have a series of other settings, mainly online through Zoom. If you go to friendshippark.org, you'll find the information and the times for these meetings. But you can also start today by signing the petition to Governor Newsom and sharing it with your contacts. If you have, if you're a lucky one that has extra resources, you can donate as well if you feel that if you're moved to do this. So there are many ways by which you can share this information if you're not close to San Diego. If you are close to San Diego, the possibility is too that we're looking at a project and resisting the project for the next 4 or 5 months. You can coordinate a group and come by, and we can create an event to show you the place, but also to resist with us and to organize with us. So the invitation is open, and we know that we are with amongst great people who have every intention to support, and we thank you for that. That's what keeps us moving, to be in community and to be hopeful, and to know that we will continue to resist just as you resist within your own local struggles.
Great, thank you so much, Adriana, for answering that question. We have a question in the chat that I think it's best addressed to Dr. Tenorio, which is, I wonder if the doctors and nurses and other medical professionals in the San Diego area are opposing the border wall in an organized way.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and that's that's a very important question. And as Pedro mentioned, I mentioned during my talk, but one of the main things I've been working really hard for is to try to get my neurosurgical colleagues on board with this. Of course, we consider a public health crisis, but we need to make more people feel the same urgency as we do. And one of the main things that I'm doing is next month, I'll be going to one of the larger neurosurgical meetings nationally to present. I've been given the opportunity to present a resolution essentially calling for more advocacy efforts from our field to halt further border wall extensions, specifically the ones here at Friendship Park, given not only its risks for increased injuries, but it's a historic park that has it's a symbol of our relationship with Mexico, right? So I'll be reaching key individuals within my field nationally that will have a lot of make a lot of decisions in terms of making a stance and hopefully bringing our field together to send a letter or petition to President Biden or other key decision makers, depending on how our conversation goes when I have it with them next month. But my hope is that they will get on board with me in this push, and if we're able to get support from nationally from this neurosurgical group, I think it will be a big win for us. So that's my next goalpost, as I like to say, in terms of advocating for this within our field. I'm also in close contact with the trauma physicians here at UC San Diego, and they are very, very supportive. Of course, they've also put out very, 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 very important work on the fivefold increase of traumatic injuries, just overall traumatic injuries that we're seeing here at our level 1 trauma center. And they've been very supportive in these efforts and have contributed immensely to these efforts. And then the final note is we do have a border fall prevention group where it's an interdisciplinary group. There's medical professionals, there's the Mexican consulate that also Pedro is also involved in. And we, of course, brainstorm trying to figure out ways that we could help spread this to the wider public and get more people that have a lot of influence on our side, essentially.
Thank you, Dr. Tenorio, for answering that question. We do have a question in the chat, but I'd like to first turn it over to Gloria to ask her question, and then Robert, I'll ask you to answer the question about representatives and what their responses have been.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gloria.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think I'm going to address this to Dr. Tenorio. I'm wondering if you're in touch with other tragedies that have happened in other parts of the border itself. And if there's any way to put together a sheet, I mean, I know that there's been atrocities also on La Bestia, as people are coming, we know that people have died, at the desert and all these, different locations. But I'm just wondering if because I was moved by the Muro de la Muerte to maybe have something, expanded in that regard, with all, I know the Rojas Hernandez case has gone to the United Nations, and that was a killing. I mean, I think it's still evolving, but it takes a lot, of time and everything. But I think that we do need to convince more people, about how this is causing the Muro is causing a lot more damage. So I just wondering, how can we, use something to document and to share it, with media and whatever. So thank you.
Yeah. So that's a very good question, and it's very timely. It is happening across the border. San Diego wasn't the only area that had border walls that were increased to 30 feet. It happened in Arizona. It happened in El Paso, Texas, and they're suffering the same tragedies that we are. I am in contact with people in Arizona and people in Texas to try to get data across the border, and to essentially the way it works, at least in the medical field, is they want published work. That's the most credible work, and key decision makers want the same thing. They look at published work. They want data that's peer reviewed. That's what they want, right? So that's why I'm pushing for this. It's very urgent, at least from my side, to get this out there, to show them that it's not just here. I honestly, looking into, as I've been, diving into this, speaking to other people in other areas, it's becoming an international crisis. It's not just here in San Diego. It's not just, in Mexico. It's happening in Arizona, and it's happening in Texas. So that's an international public health humanitarian crisis. And something I haven't touched upon, which is also, very important from our side, it's an economic crisis. It's straining our hospitals, our resources. We need more resources, and after an aspect of it I didn't touch upon is the economic costs, where it essentially increased about 70% as well, in terms of the cost to take care of each patient, right? So the main thing we need to do is get this out there, and essentially coalesce our data with other border states and put it out there as published work. So
great, thank you, Dr. Tenorio. Let's see, I think we have time for one more question, and then I'll ask our panelists to present their final remarks. So Robert, would you like, I know Adriana already put information about an upcoming press conference that's being organized by the California Endowment, as well as Representative Vargas in the chat. But Robert, would you like to say a little bit more about what the response has been from elected officials whose jurisdiction includes Friendship Park?
Absolutely. As you just stated, every elected official that has Friendship Park as part of their jurisdiction has signed on board to support, and not only verbally, but in a written format, the stopping of 30-foot walls. Even Mayor Todd Gloria sent out a very strong, heartfelt letter requesting they do not complete the 30-foot walls. And not only was it elected officials from the San Diego area that have Friendship Park as part of their district. We had elected officials all the way up to Chicago, Congressman Chuy Garcia, Rashida Tlaib, and many other congressmen and women that signed on. So we have had wide support, but we need to support Governor Newsom to bring it before President Biden to stop those 30-foot walls.
Great, thank you, Robert. And so thank you. We've pretty much reached our time, and I'd like to ask our speakers to maybe share final thoughts about this as we're moving forward and as this campaign to stop the 30-foot border walls at Friendship Park becomes more urgent. As I mentioned at the beginning, there was movement of heavy machinery. Part of the secondary border wall is being broken down now with some what appear to be temporary infrastructure being built around it. I'll ask Robert, why don't we begin with you? We'll go in the same order and share some final thoughts for our friends that have joined us today.
Sure. My final thoughts are that we need to continue to band together and raise our voices and our actions to stop 30-foot border walls. We cannot allow these man-made walls to try to come between San Diego and Tijuana. We are one community, and we cannot allow man-made walls to try to stop us from continuing of being one community.
Thank you, Robert. Selene, final thoughts that you would like to share with us?
Thank you. So I would just say that, 30-foot walls have only served to disconnect our families. And I feel that our Latino communities have offered so much to this country, and giving them this Friendship Park, giving us this Friendship Park, it's just a little bit of what we're asking back to continue this hope for our families, who this will be the only place that they will ever be able to reconnect with grandparents, parents, older people that they may just never come to see again, like it happened to me. So I feel that just dialogue needs to be created with people who really have cared for this park, who have use for this park, and it's just for all the families in the United States that have had use Friendship Park and can use Friendship Park. It definitely needs to become a better place for families to feel welcome and come and reconnect. Thank you.
Well said, Senator. Thank you so much again for your testimony. Dr. Alex Tenorio, any final thoughts that you have for us today?
Yes, just one. It's just a call for for this to be. I hope everyone feels it is an urgent matter. I do feel strongly that this group does feel it is a very urgent matter. These injuries are. I just got data from last year, and it's only getting worse in terms of morbidity and mortality, and it's going to continue getting worse as more walls, 30-foot walls, keep being built. So I just hope you keep this same energy and this same urgency that I'm feeling now, and join us in those efforts. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for your important work, Dr. Tenorio. And then we'll conclude now with Adriana Jasso. Adriana, if you can share any final thoughts for us this evening.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, my appreciation and my appreciation for being with us. Although some of you share that you're connecting from far away, we feel that you are with us, and that as we continue to find ways to challenge and resist what seems to be situations that we, at times we can't change, what the agency and what the White House and those who could make a different decision to stop this project don't know, is that we will continue to resist, that we will continue to be in community, that we will continue to challenge the official narrative, and that even if they were to continue in their project, we will be here to uphold families and dreams and aspirations. And that's one thing, you know, the personnel from Border Patrol and the officials and the Republican or the Democratic Party, they come and go, right? But our people are here to stay, and our people are here to resist. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to all of our panelists. You've all been wonderful. You provided some amazing testimonies. And I, again, also feel the connection here, and the urgency is being transmitted. Our desire to have Friendship Park be a park that uplifts our dignity, a park that sees our humanity, a park that recognizes that the love we bring forward to it will break through any of the walls that are put in place there. But it takes an organized effort. And so I appreciate all of you coming together. And I want to thank again the Zooming to the Border for Human Rights Coalition, all of you who have been a part of this for many years. I want to thank our panelists again. I want to thank the Tribuno del Pueblo and the People's Tribune for offering the all of the support over this time. And thank you again, and please sign the petition, send it to your friends, send it to your family members, your networks. We need to really show Governor Newsom that he can't be silent on this, that he needs to speak out and really uphold the desires and wishes of Californians, that Californians are saying no to 30-foot border walls because they're deadly, because they dehumanize our experience, and because they continue to separate families. Thank you for joining us. And this webinar has been recorded. It'll be available soon, and I'm sure you'll find it on the, I think it'll be in the Tribuno del Pueblo link. But thanks again. We'll end the conversation now. Bob, feel free to stop recording.